Okay, I think I'll just start then with a basic overview of AZMEP. For those that haven't heard of it, for those that have, if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to ask in the chat. AZMEP, short for Arizona Manufacturing Extension Partnership. It's part of a nationwide program called Manufacturing Extension Partnership that was started by Congress back in 1988 when many US manufacturers were chasing low-cost labor all around the world, setting up factories outside of the United States, and we watched a lot of manufacturing jobs leave the country. Congress decided that if they could come up with a program that would help manufacturing companies to be more competitive, they might be able to keep some of those jobs in the United States. I was in manufacturing in those days, but that was long before my time and a long time before I ever heard of the program. So I don't know how well it worked back then, but fast forward 32 years and we have MEPs in every state, plus one in Puerto Rico for a total of 51. Each group focuses only on the manufacturing companies in their state, and they have the freedom to operate how they see fit. So in some states, they focus primarily on lean manufacturing and continuous improvement. Here in Arizona, we've taken a much broader approach. I guess the easiest way to look at us is as a really broad-based consulting organization that only works with manufacturing companies and only in the state of Arizona. The nice part about the MEP national network is that every group is only focused on companies in their state. So there's pretty good collaboration on certain topics like cybersecurity, reshoring, and some other national initiatives. So here in Arizona, in my mind, I separate the projects and the work into two different categories. The business side, which are things like strategic planning, sales and marketing, financial reporting, financial management, accounting, all of those kinds of services, engineering support, R&D, business planning, anything that you might think of that can help the business side. And then everything else I focus on, I call it the shop floor or the factory side or the manufacturing piece. And that's really where MEP got its start a long time ago. We do a lot of continuous improvement work, a lot of supply chain work, but really look at it as anything that might be required to help the manufacturing side of the house to be more profitable, to be faster, to improve quality, anything that might be required, we'll get in and help. The way we do that is with a team of 11 people. All are part of the ACA, and I should start out by saying the MEP in Arizona is part of the Arizona Commerce Authority, our state's economic development organization. In some states, they're standalone nonprofits, and in some states, they're part of the university or community college system in that state. Everyone on the MEP team comes out of industry. Many of us with manufacturing experience in multiple industries. The average tenure in manufacturing on the team is probably 25 or so years of experience in manufacturing, different industries, different parts of the country and different parts of the world. So it's turned out to be a really good program. The program here in Arizona has only been around for about 8 years, whereas originally started in '88. Some of the other states have programs that have been around since the beginning. There was a prior MEP in Arizona that went out of business, and then the Commerce Authority applied for the new MEP and was awarded that about 8 years ago.
Hey Dave, this is Keith, can you hear me?
Yes.
So how many people are on the MEP team?
11 people now. 6 of those are client advisors, and they're out working with manufacturing clients all around the state. The way we deliver services, sometimes with people that are on the team, and sometimes with people that are on our, we call it a qualified vendor list, but we have a network of third-party providers with special expertise that we'll bring in from time to time as they're needed to deliver specific projects for us. So for example, if a company needs a safety audit, we have a third party that we bring in. All she does is safety. She's been doing it for a really long time and she's really good at it. So everybody on our qualified vendor list has gotten on that list by going through an RFQ and an evaluation process. So we know they're good. As opposed to just trying to find, a consultant on Google that's going to charge you a lot of money and you don't know if you're going to get value out of it or not. We have a network that's been evaluated by us and has been probably used with multiple clients with successful projects.
And in the case of bringing in those certain subject matter experts, who bears that cost?
So the client would cover the cost. Anything in business, right? There's no free lunch.
Sure.
But what you'll find is the providers that we've selected and vetted are very, very competitive in price. You could go directly to those providers. The cost is the same whether you come through MEP or not. The advantage you get by managing those projects through MEP is that we manage the project, we handle all the billing, we make it really, really easy for the client to do business with us. For projects that are delivered by the MEP staff, they are somewhat subsidized by the federal grant that we get from MEP. That federal grant, the way that works is we get a grant from the federal government, and in order to get that grant, we have to match it dollar for dollar. So the dollar for dollar match comes by clients paying for the services. So for those services, it's essentially subsidized by the grant money.
I see.
It's been a really successful program for a number of years. I'll tell a couple of quick stories to give people somewhat of an idea of the kinds of projects we can take on. There's a company in Tucson that we worked with a couple of years ago that makes cockpit instruments. And they were really struggling because their demand was through the roof. And they were contemplating putting in an additional production line at an investment of somewhere between $6 and $8 million. But before they pulled the trigger on that, they asked us to come in and take a look at their current production process, put together a value stream map, and see if we might be able to find some ways to make that process more efficient. We went through that, took a couple of weeks worth of work, probably 3 or 4 weeks worth of calendar time, and probably about between 2 and 3 weeks worth of effort. Went through that entire process. And the end result was, with a few tweaks to the production process, some changes in their supply chain, and a couple minor adjustments to fixturing and tooling, very minimal investment in that respect. Their total output went from 80 units per week to 150 units per week. Per day. 80 units to 150 units per day. And they did not have to invest in an additional production line. Their entire cost to MEP for that project was about $4,000. I tried to do the math on an ROI for that and avoiding the capital investment. It would be huge. Another good example of probably a much broader example and a much bigger project is a company that is called Scientex. They're the largest manufacturer of shrink wrap in Asia, and they have several factories around the world, Malaysia, Vietnam, a couple other places. But they were importing shrink wrap into the United States and selling it to customers all around the country. So if you think about shrink wrap, right, it's a very low margin product, heavy, bulky, very expensive to ship. So they wanted to set up a factory somewhere in the United States. They visited Arizona and 4 or 5 other states and ended up buying a 90,000 square foot facility on Polk Street in Phoenix. And they contracted AZMEP to do essentially everything to get that facility up and running. So it was an older building, needed some significant modifications, needed to be on a railroad spur. The building they bought's on a railroad spur. We brought in the architect, contractors, made all the modifications to the building, worked with SRP to expand power service, worked with the HVAC companies to improve that, a roofing company to fix the roof, negotiated with the railroad to get the spur activated, helped them with installation of 85-foot tall silos that would house plastic pellets. The silos had to be lifted up over the railroad tracks, something railroads don't like to do. That was a couple-month negotiation, but we got that done. And in about 12 months' time, a little bit less, the facility was ready to start production. About half the amount of time that the company had estimated it would take to outfit the building, get their new equipment designed and custom built, installed, and up and running.
Did you source the equipment also?
We did not source the equipment because they had existing relationships with the equipment manufacturers.
Okay.
Because they use the same company all around the world.
Right.
The equipment was manufactured in New York, but we worked with the suppliers when they came to Phoenix to visit the facility. We took them through the permitting process with the city. We were pretty successful in expediting the permitting process and the inspection processes to get it up and running quicker. But we did work with the equipment companies. For example, they needed core samples of the floor to make sure it was strong enough to support the equipment. We brought that person in. They needed some scaffolding built. They needed catwalks built over the equipment. We brought in some companies to do that work. So it was, a really comprehensive product. We handled all the staffing for them. We hired the plant manager. We helped them hire the first round of labor. By the time it was all said and done, they invested about $26 million and hired 100 people.
So you were effectively their on the ground representative to get the facility operational.
Right. They had no expats here. They had a couple engineers and a couple executives that traveled back and forth probably once or twice per quarter, a little more frequently toward the end, and got it up and running.
Wow. Incredible.
So they've been so happy with that process that they've been talking about buying the building next door to bring their medical products line into the US.
Wow, that's great. That's a great story.
So before I move on, any questions about Azmep or what we do or how we might be able to help?
I can't see the chat or the questions, so maybe you can.
Yeah, I can see the chat. I don't see any questions. So I'm going to move on then and start talking about the Azmep Emergency Assistance Program. Most people probably have not heard of that, but I'm sure everyone's heard of the CARES Act.
Yep.
And when the CARES Act was passed a while back, there was funding in there for the national MEP organizations to apply for additional grant money and to use that grant money to help manufacturing companies that have been damaged by the pandemic. So the way that works here in Arizona is we have additional grant money and we use that money to provide additional subsidies for companies that were negatively impacted by the pandemic. That could be, they watched their business dry up, they watched their customers go away or customer demand shrink. They may have been profitable before, they're not profitable now, or they may have experienced significant declines in profit, but still be profitable. We put together a program that will help those companies with subsidized services. So for example, probably the most common request we get is to help companies identify different markets. So for example, some of our aerospace and defense clients are really struggling. One recently told me they don't expect their business to come back until 2024.
Wow.
And I was surprised by that because we're seeing other businesses pick up and get back to normal much faster than that. So they've asked us to come in and help assess their capabilities and determine what other markets they might be able to sell into. So different products, obviously, but using their same manufacturing capabilities. And we're working through that process now. That's been a very common request for companies that have seen demand dry up. It's also pretty common, right, to see manufacturing companies that are having, 60 to 80%, sometimes more of their business coming from all going into one industry or going into one or two customers. And when those customers get hurt, their business really dries up. So we also have similar requests. Hey, I'm already in this industry, but I've been heavily concentrated with a couple of customers. Can you help us develop additional customers? And we do that. We're taking them through a strategy process, evaluating capabilities, and helping them identify additional markets or additional customers in current markets. Probably the second most requested support item is around financials and managing cash flows. And what we've discovered over the years, especially with smaller companies, is that they don't have very robust accounting processes, don't necessarily have very good financial reporting processes. And therefore, when things take a hit, they really struggle to manage their cash flow. So we've been going in, working with companies to get their financial reporting cleaned up, but also to develop cash flow models where for companies that are really tight on cash, we've been doing daily cash flow updates. We're not doing it all for them. We're putting the process in place and they're doing it with their own people. But when things get really tough and people are at the end of the day trying to figure out, okay, which bills can I pay this week and which ones can I push out? They're managing the cash flow in and the cash flow out on a daily basis, some weekly. Obviously, we wouldn't want to have to do that more than monthly, but we can build a model however it needs to be to fit for the business. The way the emergency assistance program works, there's an application process and companies need to apply. It's a SurveyMonkey tool, probably takes 5 minutes or less to fill out. And then there's a screening process. Once the screening process is complete and the company is accepted into the program, there's an online assessment tool that we use that asks a bunch of questions. It probably takes, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes or so to fill that out. And that's just a business assessment tool that gives us some insight into what's happening within the company. And it outputs a graphical representation of what's happening within the company based on different categories and different parts of the business. And then we'll sit down with the business owners or the business leaders and review that, talk about what challenges the assessment points out, but to validate that with the owner to get a better understanding of what's happening within the company, and then work with them to see what services might be most helpful for that company at this point in time. And then we put together a program that lists out all the different projects, what the total cost is, what the subsidy is, and then start those projects as soon as it's convenient for the business owners or business leaders.
Interesting. What does that subsidy usually amount to? 30%, 40% of what you would charge?
It varies. What I've seen so far, it's been between 30 and 70%.
Oh.
And we've seen some, smaller projects. Just to give you some example, a typical strategy project, we've done a bunch of these. Total cost around $4,000. I think the subsidies on that have typically been about $2,000 subsidy.
Mm-hmm.
We have other consultants that come to us and complain, why are you doing that for $4,000? And what do you mean? Well, I normally charge $25,000 for that. Well, too bad. Right. Well, I mean, we're not in it to make money. We're in it to provide value for the manufacturers. And we don't function on a profit motive like those consultants do.
No.
I'm even reluctant to use the word consultant because I think everybody hates consultants. And it's really hard to find a good one. So maybe someday we'll come up with a better term.
Question for you. Do you run into the issue of cybersecurity much with the manufacturers?
We do. And that's been a huge effort for us recently, especially with the defense suppliers. And so we're really developing our support for cybersecurity. And it's really challenging, right? Because especially for the DoD suppliers, it's critical. And it's been announced for a couple of years now that they're going to have to beef up their cybersecurity. And NIST put out some standards that companies are supposed to follow. But many of the suppliers in the DoD space, especially the smaller companies, have been reluctant to spend money on it until their customers required it. What we're seeing now is the big companies, Raytheon, Honeywell, General Dynamics, it's really been pushed on them. Now they're really forcing it on their suppliers to the point where we're having clients come to us and say, hey, Raytheon just told me that if I'm not compliant in 6 weeks, I'm going to lose this contract.
Wow.
I'm not going to be able to bid on the next contract. And they're coming to us asking for help. So we have some programs in place to help them. The way it was explained to me early on by one of the cybersecurity experts is that you're never really compliant because the world is changing so fast. You're always striving to keep up. But what the requirements do is make sure that you put processes in place, secure measures in place so that you're as protected as you can be. But that's always changing, right? The criminals are really smart.
Sure.
and keep finding out new ways to hack into companies faster than the experts can find ways to prevent them. So it's almost a never-ending process, but it's essential, especially for the DoD suppliers. But for the non-DoD suppliers, we've seen some cases where it's also very important. And there are some simple things that can be done to beef up their security that are not very expensive. But my counterpart in Colorado tells a story of a couple of his clients, both of whom were hacked, and all of their intellectual property was stolen, their product designs, and both companies within 6 months were finding their identical product being sold in the United States for a lower price than what it cost them to build it in Colorado.
No kidding.
Right. And both those companies were between 40 and 50 employees. And there wasn't a whole lot they can do. Both hacks were from organizations in China, and their exact product was being shipped in from China and being sold in other states. And within I think it was 6 months for one company and 8 months for the other, both of those companies went out of business.
No kidding. That's really incredible.
Yeah, it's insane. And, at the federal level, I hear our clients all the time say, well, why doesn't the federal government put a stop to that? I don't know. I can't answer that, right? But it's so prevalent, it happens so often that I don't know how any organization could try to keep up with it all. And, the best thing that any company can do is do whatever they can to protect themselves. And we've identified some solutions and some service providers that are very reasonably priced, to the point where, depending on the company and the complexity, we can put in some pretty low cost solutions that really beef up the level of security.
That's interesting. Yeah, I'm afraid that's here to stay, the cybersecurity.
It's not going away, and probably the most common cause of breaches is human error, employee error by the employee, either clicking on a link that looks legit and it's not. One of the common tricks of the trade is you take a thumb drive and throw it in the employee parking lot. The employee's walking into the office in the morning and they think, oh, one of my coworkers must have dropped a thumb drive. They bring it in, stick it in their laptop to figure out who it is so they can return it. And they've just infected the entire network. But as their laptop starts flashing, right, and they know it, it may appear to be just a blank thumb drive, and they've just infected their entire company network and not even knowing it.
Wow. Gosh.
Yeah, crazy stuff.
Getting creative.
They're very creative. Yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah.
Okay, curious, are there any questions about the emergency assistance program or anybody that might be interested in learning more about it? I will put in the link to the MEP website, so if anyone's interested, they can go there and find out more about the program. You can also learn about how to contact the team. We have advisors that work all around the state.
And Dave, you're the MEP reps. They go all out over the state. They go everywhere, don't they?
Yeah, they go everywhere. They're very rarely ever in the office in Phoenix. We have people that, all the advisors work out of their homes, and they're scattered around the state, and they do a lot of driving. They travel a lot.
What, Gary's based in Tucson?
Yeah, Gary Williams is based in Tucson. He covers Tucson and all of southern Arizona. We have pretty good coverage for the rest of the state. We've gone just about every corner of the state.
That's great. Yeah, I've seen you guys in Kingman and Prescott in the past.
Yeah, we're in Prescott quite a bit. We're in Kingman at least a few times a month. Not just visiting, not necessarily counting project work. We're up in Flag a fair amount. It's interesting, if you look at the distribution of manufacturers around the state, everybody thinks about Phoenix and Tucson because those are concentrated areas. But I'm always impressed by all the manufacturers I see in the more remote parts of the state, in the rural communities.
That's great. That's great. We need more of them.
All right. Any other questions from the group? I can talk about more companies we work with. I love talking about the successes we've had.
Yeah, maybe give us another case study or two.
Yeah, there's a company in Chandler that we've worked with for a few years now, that a small company, family-owned business that makes cosmetic products, and their claim to fame is a unique nail polish that has totally organic, no odor, hypoallergenic. It's just been a fantastic product, and we've been working with them for several years now, and they've just grown. Their growth has been astronomical. And it's interesting, we talk about companies being damaged by the pandemic. This company was actually helped by it, which sounds kind of weird, but 70 to 80% of their sales was through spas and salons. And when all the spas and salons were closed down, what they found were all the patrons of those businesses went to their website and just started buying the product online. They loved the product so much that they went, well, you don't just buy one color. You might buy half a dozen or a dozen different colors and buy the whole kit. So they watched their business grow dramatically. And as you might expect, their online business had higher profit margins than it does selling through salons. And they just announced recently they were moving into a much larger facility. I think it's about 2.5 to 3 times the size of the facility that they were in. So it's been a huge success. And we've been working with that company for a few years on strategy, financial management, organizational development, human resource stuff, lean plant layout, continuous improvement activities. It's been a tremendous success, and it's just fun for us, for all of us that came out of industry and we're used to worrying about meeting quarterly earnings numbers or stockholder reports, or answering to a board because we missed our sales or didn't exceed our goals by enough. This is great. We just wake up every morning thinking about how can we help manufacturing companies today, and which companies can we help?
That's great. Any questions from the audience? Any of the attendees got any questions or comments?
Or if you want, you can just put in the chat, "Shut up, Dave, I want to go eat lunch."
That could be too, sure. Well, Dave, I know you guys were also very active with the COVID pandemic, and a lot of companies trying to pivot their business and get into PPE. You want to talk a little bit about some of the companies you got engaged with?
Yeah, that was, some pretty crazy times, right? Because we've all heard the stories of hospital workers and first responders not having sufficient PPE to protect themselves while they were helping people, helping patients. There are a good number of companies around the state that stepped up to convert production from current product lines that we're seeing reduced demand into making masks and gowns all around the state. And most of those products were going to Arizona hospitals. Few of those manufacturers are even shipping out of state. But there was a big push for masks, especially the cloth masks. N95s, as everybody knows, were in really short supply, but it's also expensive and really challenging to ramp production for that. And you couldn't get the material anyway. So a lot of companies that had sewing operations were making cloth masks and making gowns. And we were able to help many of them with supply chain issues that they were running into, staffing issues, plant layout issues, equipment conversion issues, and it went really well. Some of the product was being stockpiled by the state, and a lot of it was being sold directly to hospitals. Some of you may have heard of a company called Fabric in Tempe.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably one of the biggest gown making operations in the state now. Well, I'm sure it is the largest. Some of the other companies have ramped down and reverted back to their traditional businesses. Fabric is continuing to make gowns. And it's a small organization in Tempe that their main business is making gowns and dresses and costumes for Hollywood. And when they heard about the need for hospital gowns, they stepped up and were able to quickly work with some of their existing suppliers work with us to identify some additional suppliers for material and to hire people and train them very quickly. We went in and set up their production line because you might think, if you're just making costumes, right, everything's one off. So they didn't really have any concept of what does a production line look like. And we sent one of our continuous improvement specialists in there to help relay out the line, define the different steps in the process, and get them to the point where they were cranking out a lot of gowns every day. We also worked with WL Gore has not been looking for a lot of publicity, but they had a lot of material that they wanted to donate. So we were able to get in the middle and work with WL Gore, identify the fabric that could be used in making gowns and connect them up with fabric and have the material delivered to fabric. Gore donated the gowns, fabric donated the labor, and the majority of those gowns were donated to the Navajo Nation. People have heard that, the COVID-19 was really bad in the Navajo Nation and they needed all kinds of help. So it was great to see the community come together and to be able to support that. Mm-hmm. Point out that those gowns are reusable, not the typical throwaway gowns you see when you go to the doctor or the surgical unit, but these gowns could be laundered. Some of them could up to 100 times and some of them up to 300 times. So if you're going into a hospital, all the hospitals already have laundering facilities. Instead of, needing, tens of thousands of gowns, you need far fewer because you can reuse them and just launder them. So it was a pretty big success all around.
Oh, that's great. I know you just alluded to it. You got involved with sourcing some of the raw materials. I know we worked on trying to find alcohol for hand sanitizer. So that was a huge help during that time. Manufacturers didn't know where to go.
Yeah, that was a giant challenge, and they were all different. I don't know. I learned more about alcohol than I ever wanted to, because there's all different purity issues and distillation issues, and some of the alcohol that was available needed to be distilled, go through the distilling process several times over. The same cosmetics company that I mentioned earlier wanted to make hand sanitizer, and they have a really strong background. The founders, the owners are, both very technical. And the price of alcohol went through the roof. And it was really hard to find. But they also discovered that their ATF license to be able to buy alcohol had expired, and they didn't need it for their current product line. They were struggling with the renewal process, and it was 6 weeks or more, and they couldn't even get answers. So they asked us if there were any way we could help, and we made a couple calls to our senators, and we're still not sure which senator made it happen, but within 4 days they had their ATF license renewed.
I realized that you had to have an ATF license for processed alcohol as opposed to internal consumption.
Yeah, I didn't know it either. It didn't seem to make any sense, but they had done it before when they used to use alcohol, so they knew.
Wow.
But it's interesting. It's also interesting how sometimes the right phone call from the right person. Now, I'm not the right person. I didn't make that call, but those calls to the senators. But we had someone at ACA do it, and it worked.
Yeah.
Still haven't been able to figure out how all that unfolded, but it worked.
Yeah, I think I was Senator McSally. So yeah, that's really great.
Yeah.
Well, good. Any other questions out there? We have 3 lines open. Seeing any, Dave?
No.
Okay, well, any closing thoughts as we wrap this up?
Yeah, for anybody that's in the manufacturing business, it's there are all kinds of ways we can help. I would encourage you to contact the group, find out who your advisor is or would be, and just talk with them. Sometimes, all businesses have challenges. I don't think we've ever come across a company we couldn't help. Not all companies want to be helped, but sometimes it pays just to have an objective set of eyes come in and learn a little bit about the business and understand, offer some ideas. One of the other things that we found to be pretty important, we're trying to keep as much manufacturing business in the state as we can. So we'll put a lot of effort into introducing manufacturers to each other And the thought behind that is, if you've got suppliers, why buy from out-of-state suppliers if you can get the same quality and price and probably better delivery from suppliers that are already in Arizona?
Sure.
And it's also a great way to bring in additional business.
Yeah, that's great. Well, good. Well, Dave, thank you for your time and thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Hey, Keith.
Yes.
Sorry, we did have one more question come in.
Oh, sure.
And it is from Chris Pastors from Coconino
Coconino.
County, something. But he asked, can you please share the top reasons why manufacturers should utilize MEP again? What about startup manufacturers? How can they benefit from connecting with MEP?
Great
Yes,
question.
that's great. We do, there aren't a lot of startup manufacturers, but we do work with several. And there are all kinds of reasons, but probably the biggest reason we find for the startups is startups tend to be small and not have a lot of breadth or depth of expertise, but some special skills among the owners or the leaders that are starting the business. One of the key roles MEP plays in those cases is we can bring all the expertise that you might need at a very low cost. For example, we tend to think of companies like Honeywell that they're not going to need a lot of support from MEP or Raytheon. We do work with both of those companies, but you would think they tend to have all the expertise in-house that they need. Sometimes they have it and they don't have enough of it. It's the same with the startups, right? If you're the technical CEO starting up a manufacturing operation, you may have all the skills you need to do everything, but you don't have the bandwidth to do it all. So, and you also probably don't have the funding to go and hire a whole bunch of full-time employees or high-priced consultants. So you can bring in MEP. For example, if you need to put together an employee manual for a startup company, or a safety program and a safety manual, conduct a safety audits. We can do all of those things very low cost. If you need to go hire a whole bunch of people and you don't have time to do all the staffing work, we can handle all that for you. If you need to find health insurance, workers' comp insurance, all the stuff that, when you're trying to start up a business, you probably don't want to spend your time on, you can outsource all of those things to us. If you're laying out a new production line or outfitting a new building, and that's not your expertise, we have people that can support all of that. If you're trying to figure out the best way to lay out a line, the best way to ship your product, the best way to manage your inventory, the best way to put accounting processes in place, what software tools to purchase, to implement, how you implement that, how you train your employees, we can help with all of those kinds of things.
Right, and at a fraction of the price.
Yeah,
normally cost.
Right, very low cost.
Yeah. So good. You see any others out there, Tori or Dave? Thank you, Chris, for that question. That was great.
We're all clear, Keith.
Okay, well, thank you, Dave Garafano, once again from Arizona MEP. And thanks to everybody who logged in, and appreciate your time and attention. And if you have questions, you can reach out to me or Dave or Jamie Kerr, and we will get back to you and see what we can do to help. Have a good day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Keith. Thanks for setting this up, and thank you, everyone. Have a great day.